How many of you have ever seen a 3D movie in theaters? How many of you have understood the process that was going on, like how it works? Okay. Sure, we put on these glasses and when the screen tells us to, and like magic, elbows and arms and explosions are coming out of us. But have you ever wondered how your eyes turn these projected lights into three-dimensional shapes? I too was curious about this process and how it works. Today I'd like to explain how 3D imagery works in film. First off, let me introduce some history on 3D technology. 3D imagery was originally developed through photography in 1844 by David Brewster. He invented this thing called the stereoscope, which allows you to take 3D pictures. The idea of this is that you look at both of them at the same time, and by doing this, you kind of have to look at it cross-eyed in order to see it in 3D. It kind of takes practice, and it's kind of weird to look at something cross-eyed, but it works. In 1855, the kinematoscope was invented, which was used to make 3D motion pictures. It was similar to this process, where it showed things in different angles in order to create depth in the picture. In the 1920s, the first anaglyph movie was produced and released to the public. This form of 3D was popularly used in all the way into the 90s. In the 1970s, the polarization process was invented and was not widely used until recently. Now let's talk about the different forms of 3D. The first example is, or actually, something you could do right now is hold your thumb up to your face and close your left eye, and then open it and then close your right eye. So like alternate between eyes, and then you can see that your thumb looks like it's moving, but it's actually in the same spot. This idea is applied to 3D. The most commonly known form of 3D is called the anaglyph. This process uses 3D glasses like this, with the red and the blue. Okay. With the system, the images on the screen are projected with two color layers superimposed onto each other, one being red and one being blue. When you put on the glasses, each eye sees a separate visual, the red and the blue one. Your visual cortex combines the views to create the representation of 3D objects. This process isn't that great because the coloring of the red and the blue disrupts the coloring that's on the screen, and so your picture doesn't really look good. And another thing that happens is something called ghosting, where if you move your head around, the images on the left side will move onto the right, and this creates a really big distortion, looks really awkward. The most used type of 3D nowadays is called polarization, and this process is similar to the anaglyph by projecting two images with different perspectives and polarizations on a silver screen. They use a silver screen because light will bounce off the lights, and you won't be able to see the frequencies of the polarization. And these are polarization glasses. There are two different kinds, linear and circular. These are circular. The linear ones have lines on them that collect the polarized light. The left side is vertical, and then the right side is horizontal. And with the circular lens, they put a lens on the projector that creates like a slowing effect of the light. And so that way, when you have the circular lenses, you can see all around you. Like you can move your head around, and it won't affect it won't have any distortion. Overall, I hope you find this topic interesting, and the next time you're in a movie theater waiting in line for the next 3D movie, you can tell the person next to you how exciting 3D is with its history, different forms, and how it works. And for those of you who have never seen movies in 3D, give it a try, because you might find out that it's really good.
All right, Chris, what did you think?
Overall, it seemed pretty good, except it seemed a little bit scripted overall. But the basic information for the 3D I thought was pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, what did you think of the organization and the introduction? How about the language or the transitions? What did you think about the visuals?
It all flowed together pretty good. Each visual went with what was being talked about, so everything correlated with each other. So it made it easy to understand.
Okay. You don't have to stand up there. You know, it makes you feel like you are the subject of like under a microscope or something. That's just wrong. All right. I like the topic. I think you did a nice job introducing and stating what the topic was. The attention device, I thought, got a little complicated because you've got an audience survey and then you've got a question that you're asking them, and it's kind of hard to respond in that situation. You're not really surveying at that point. The first visual that you had has basically no function, so I think you could lose it. You need to have a clearer preview of what the material is going to be. It's well signposted in the body of the speech, and it's easy to follow during the presentation, but there wasn't any setup at the beginning. At the end, in the summary, you do have kind of a review of what the main points are, and that helps organize those ideas a little bit more. The first section is, I thought at first it was going to be chronological in nature because that whole first section is really about the origins, and then once you get past that point, it really turns into a topical speech because you're describing the different techniques that are being used. I think you could go into a little bit more detail about the advantages and the disadvantages of the two different techniques and provide us with some examples to make it a little bit more interesting. For instance, some of those anaglyph type 3D movies. What are some of the examples of those, and were they successful or not successful? Were there problems that were associated with it? Why did they move to the other technology? Some stories or something to make it a little bit more interesting. The same sort of thing, I'm wondering, well, why do we have the two different techniques that you described with the polarized lenses? Is one more successful than the other? Does it require different kinds of equipment for projecting it? If I was thinking about contemporary 3D movies, is there an example of one that fits one category and one that fits a different category, and were they, again, successful or unsuccessful? I think you could have added a little bit more on that. But your explanations are pretty good. I think sometimes the transparencies that you show need a little bit more support for them. I think you would want to try and get away with having the lights on, or maybe turning off the lights in the back and leaving the lights on in front. I'm not sure. We're going to have to check because you're in the dark the whole time that you're speaking. And at first you begin speaking to the screen. You got better during the presentation, then you turned and spoke more to us. But you're leaning on the table at one point, you're in that particular corner, and because you've got the visuals on the whole time that you're speaking, you never move from that spot, and that'll be a little bit of a problem. It's not that big a deal on this assignment because we're not heavily working on the delivery aspects, but in future situations it would be more problematic. All right, thank you.